Thambi Naidoo and his legacy. On a winter's day in July 1997, at the Truth and Reconciliation Hearings special session on prisons, Dr. Alex Bahrain noted that the next submission was unusual. It was from 5 members of one family. As he thanked the family for sharing their very often bitter and difficult circumstances, he recognized that this was a culmination of over a century of struggle and commitment. He said, "To know that you are alive and continue to build where so much was destroyed, thank you very much indeed." All 5 siblings had been either arrested, jailed, or tortured at different times over the period of 40 years. Their story is one that echoes the experiences of many Indians who were flung out to the diaspora during British colonial rule of India, and of many Indians who fought for Indian independence. The influence and leadership of Gandhi in both the South African and the Indian struggles for independence and emancipation is intertwined with the history of the Naidoo family over the past 100 years. It is a story that many people will identify with. The Naidoo family's contribution to the struggle for freedom and equality in South Africa began with Govindasamy Krishnasamy Thambi Naidoo and his arrival in South Africa in 1886. Gandhi has noted that Thambi Naidoo was an important figure in the Satyagraha movement and describes him as courageous, unfaltering and lion-like. Thambi Naidoo was born in Mauritius in 1875. Aged 14, together with his sister and brother, they travelled to Kimberley in South Africa. Shortly after, the gold diggings began in Johannesburg, and they travelled there. He started hawking and selling fresh produce, gradually expanding the business to cartage and wholesaling. At age 19, Thambi organised a deputation to the Johannesburg Municipal Council and was part of another deputation to petition President Kruger. Thambi's path crossed with Gandhi's, and by 1907, aged 32, he became a member of the Executive Committee of the Transvaal British India Association, of which Gandhi was the secretary. Thambi was a stoic and tireless organizer who was able to rally, inspire, and lead peoples from all language groups and all backgrounds. Thambi was fluent in many languages, which proved to help Gandhi recruit local support for campaigns against the brutal anti-Indian laws. Later, in 1907, he was arrested as a Satyagrahi, and he subsequently spent 14 terms in prison. Thambi was physically strong, with an indomitable spirit. He kept his fellow Satyagrahis' morale up by encouraging them and was equally willing to do menial work as well as to show leadership. His wife, Veeramal, also showed exceptional courage. Along with her mother, these brave women left their children behind to volunteer to go to jail. During the 1913 passive resistance campaign, Veeramal volunteered to go to jail despite the fact that she was pregnant. She took with her her infant daughter, Seshamal, and she spent 3 months in jail with hard labour. The day after she was released, she gave birth to her son Mitlin. So committed to the cause was Thambi that he lost his business and his income. His family, also committed to the ideals of Satyagraha and austere living, went to live and work at Gandhi's Tolstoy farm. There, Thambi and Veeramal entrusted into the care of Gandhi 4 of his young sons, Bala, Basadi, Naransamy and Pakri. Gandhi described them as his pearls. The boys travelled to India, where for some time they were at the ashram of Rabindranath Tagore. Thambi's daughter Tayanagi became a satyagrahi. She was a strong and disciplined woman who successfully raised a family whilst playing a leading role in community organizations. She was active in the Tamil League and she helped the poorest of the poor. She also organized the feeding of the treason trialists in Pretoria every day for 4 years, and she participated in the historic Women's March of 1956. She was jailed for 30 days during protests against the Ghetto Act, and again during the Defiance campaign. And again, she was arrested aged 75, leading a protest. Thambi's son Narayan was active in the Defiance campaign and was involved in the struggle up to the day he died, when he defied doctors' orders to rest in order to attend a meeting. Narayan was a trade unionist and a peace activist. He lived in a world characterized by Cold War, colonial oppression and struggles for freedom. He was detained 4 times. A visionary, he said, "I have always maintained that the Indian people of South Africa cannot improve their lot until they come out in open defiance of the policy of segregation, which is aimed at keeping the non-European population under subjugation." Narayan's wife Amma Naidoo also volunteered to go to jail during the Defiance campaign, and she was jailed along with her sister-in-law Tayanagi. Whilst Amma was active in various committees and serving as vice president of the Transvaal Indian Congress in 1983, she had also endured a 30-year period where at least one of her children were either detained, in jail, or in exile. In Shanti's case, for 1 whole year, Shanti's whereabouts were unknown to Amma. Amma's household was continually raided by the police over this time. It should be noted that the extended family in Pretoria supported Amma and Narayan all these years, sharing what little they had. Their 5 children have all made sacrifices. In 1969, Shanti, an activist, was detained without trial. She spent 367 days in solitary confinement. Shanti was tortured during interrogation. She recounts, "I was forced to stand for 5 days and nights while they fired questions at me. I lost sense of time. I began to lose a hold on reality. Towards the end of the interrogation, I had terrifying hallucinations." Shanti then left the country and spent the next 23 years in exile, working for the trade union movement, the anti-apartheid movement and the ANC. Indres was one of the first recruits to Umkhonto we Sizwe, the newly formed armed wing of the ANC. During a sabotage campaign, his unit was sold out and Indres was shot in the shoulder and arrested. He was then jailed for 10 years on Robben Island. During his time on Robben Island, Indres was often assaulted for defying unjust rules in prison, and he spent about 1/3 of his sentence serving periods of solitary confinement. After serving his sentence, in 1973 he was placed under house arrest. Indres defied his banning orders and left South Africa to continue working for the ANC. Murthy was detained in the 1960s and again in the 1970s. He was active in civic organizations. During the 1960s, him and his siblings were banned or under house arrest, meaning that despite living in the same house, they were not allowed to communicate with each other or be in a gathering of more than 2 people. Ramni went into exile at the age of 21, only reuniting with her family after 27 years. Prema was detained and tortured in the 1980s. He was active in the UDF. He performed underground work throughout the 80s until 1994. He continues to serve his community and country as a local leader and councillor. The fourth generation of Thambi's descendants have been either in the ANC in exile, in Umkhonto we Sizwe, working in the underground structures of the ANC inside the country, or participating in banned organizations. Kuban was arrested aged 17. Many family members of this fourth generation continue to serve South Africa to build our democracy. They work in the NGO sector, the public sector, in the civil service and as government officials. They are active in political, civic and women's organizations. In 1934, Gandhi wrote to Manilal Gandhi and his wife, requesting that they take whatever steps may be necessary to perpetuate Thambi's memory. It is important for the South African people and for the people of India and its diaspora that this history be well researched, be well documented and the gaps be filled. Especially at this juncture of our history, because we are living in a time where short or incomplete memories of the past mean that atrocities may be perpetuated or repeated. Our children should not forget. They should be inspired so that they are able to defend our rights and work for peace and equality.